Just for We the People News, we're going to go over some basic contract laws. Alrighty? Always remember, I'm not an attorney. Don't care to be an attorney. Anything I say, it just as for all of us to learn. For everybody to never look straight forward, always look around, for the outside forces want to commit harm upon you. Alrighty, let's dig through this.
Governments, these are what they're called. They're called body politics. Okay, that's what your local municipality is, your local county, your local township, your local borough. These are all body politics. Okay, now let's read what a body politic is. This is out of Bouvier's dictionary. So you got a body politic. Government corporations. When applied to the government, this phrase signifies the state. And number two, as to the persons who compose the body politic, they take collectively the name of people or nation, and individually they are citizens when considered in relation to their political rights. Look at that, political rights. And subjects, look at that, they're subjects, as being submitted to the laws of the state. And we're going to find out why they use those words very shortly. When it refers to corporations, the term body politic means that the members of such corporations shall be considered as artificial persons. Let's put persons there, okay? Oh, as an artificial person or persons. There you go. Tells you right there. So if you are a member of a body politic, you're an artificial person. So unless you choose to be an artificial person of that corporation, any law, statute, code, or ordinance written by that corporation's officers have nothing at all to do with you. Hence, they refer to you as taxpayer, resident, citizen, subject, etc. Whatever other terminologies they come up with. So this is why they're doing this. They are reducing your status down from a man or woman who was second. So I said I write these on the fly. Who was second under the Creator, and reducing your status down so that you are under them, because these body politics don't have jurisdiction over a man or a woman. They have jurisdiction over. They can only have jurisdiction over entities that they create, and they create artificial persons. And some of the artificial persons they create are called taxpayers, residents, citizens, subjects. So that's why you see that letter, Dear Taxpayer, or Dear Citizen. And if you respond back to that as a taxpayer or a citizen, they're going to assume basically that you've agreed that that's who you are and that's your status. So that's one of the reasons why we do that affidavit of status. We take all those presumptions away from them beforehand, or we correct them basically. So we're not really correcting our status. Your status was never changed. You're a man or a woman, that's it. They're making presumptions about your status, so you're not correcting your status. You're correcting them because they have a presumption about your status that's incorrect. Now look, and there's only two ways someone can tie you to a written instrument. And a written instrument's a law, statute, code, an ordinance, anything. It's any written instrument. There's only two ways you can attach somebody to a written instrument. It's got to be one, that they own you. And just what we just talked about there, the body politics, these municipal corporations, they own taxpayers, citizens, and residents. So in a way, they could claim that they own you. That's why they're calling you that. They're reducing your status down. Easily rebutted with your affidavit of status. Now, the other way is you willingly obligated yourself to be bound by the written instrument, by that law, that statute, that code, that ordinance. And I'm going to guess here that probably you didn't do that, okay? And that's why we're in this mess here, because they got everyone dumbed down to a point where they don't understand the basics of what a contract is, and how no man or woman can just arbitrarily attach another man or woman to a piece of paper because somebody slapped a title on them and gave them, a fancy title, legislator, or, town manager, borough manager. Just because someone gets a fancy title it doesn't reduce your rights. Okay, remember, all men are created equal. And like I said, when I use men or man, I'm talking women too. We're all created equal. So if we're all created equal, how can someone get a fancy title and and suddenly just write things down on a piece of paper or a written instrument and just make it apply to you? They can't. Okay, they have to either own you, which means these are things that they create that they own. I'm pretty sure that they don't own you. Or you willingly obligated yourself to be bound by that written instrument. And I'm pretty certain you didn't do that either, because even things that you've signed that you think you've contracted with these people for, you actually have it. And we're going to cover that why, what the whys of that. And this is what's tripping everybody up. And listen, unless any written instrument meets these elements, it's not a contract. Let me say that again. Unless any written instrument meets these 5 elements, it's not a contract. You have no obligation to anyone. So first, there must be an offer made to you. Hey, I'm going to, and I use the analogy all the time of painting a fence. So if I went to my neighbor John and said, hey John, I'll paint your fence. And John says, well, if I said, go to John and say, hey, I'll paint your fence for $500, John. And John says, okay, Alphonse, I'll accept that. So I made John an offer, and he accepted. And there's even consideration in this offer, because what consideration means is we're both exchanging something of value. That's what consideration means. It's something of value. I'm exchanging my labor to John, painting the fence, and John's exchanging his money to me as compensation for painting the fence. So we have 3 elements right there of a contract that me and John just created. When I made that offer, he accepted it, and it's obvious we both have consideration here. John's money for my labor. There has to be a meeting of the minds also. Even though me and John have the 3 elements of a contract, the main 3 elements, there's also got to be a meeting of the minds, which that includes full disclosure. So me and John have to work out terms like, in other words, am I going to paint John's fence 5 years from now? Am I going to paint it tomorrow? We got to work out those terms as, Alphonse, when are you going to paint the fence? Oh, John, how about if I paint it to you by next week? Great, and we'll put the date down. That's the date I have to have the fence painted by. And I have to give John full disclosure. Now, what if I happened to buy like a bad batch of paint, and I know this batch of paint's bad because I've been having complaints from customers, and I got a little more left, and I'm going to use it up on John's fence. And I don't tell John that I'm going to use defective paint on John's fence. Well, guess what? Me and John never had a meeting of the minds, and I never fully disclosed that to John. Because had I disclosed that to John, John would have never taken my offer. He wouldn't have accepted my offer. It would be crazy for him to accept my offer. So I never gave John full disclosure. And, you start looking at the things you've signed and ask yourself, were you ever offered something? Did you ever willingly accept it? Was there any exchange of value? And was there ever really a meeting of the minds? Because you can't have the meeting of the minds with a corporate fiction. Fictions don't have minds, okay? The Disney Corporation doesn't have a mind, okay? Your local township, borough or city doesn't have a mind. There's no mind to meet. And anything that they have you sign, I guarantee no one's ever disclosed anything to you about what you're signing. They're not giving you the real disclosure of what you're signing there. So, and here's the key one that so many people miss. A contract must be signed by 2 living, sentient, there's misspelling, I write these on the fly, must be signed by 2 living, sentient beings, okay? I can't sign a contract with my lamp. Can't sign a contract with my computer monitor. I can't sign a contract with my chair. So I can't sign a contract with the county. I can't sign a contract with the township. I can't sign a contract with the borough. Can only sign a contract with another living man or woman. That's it. I mean, these are the 5 elements of a contract. And if you're missing any one of these elements, you don't have a contract, okay? And even things that you're actually contracted for with people, if they didn't disclose something to you within that contract, you guess what? You could void that contract. Now you may wind up in court because the other party might sue you, but if you can prove that that other party hid something from you and didn't disclose it to you, well then you can get out of that contract because there was no full disclosure of what they did. But this is the real important one that people are getting hung up on. Got to be signed by two living beings. It's not an if. It's a guaranteed. It's got to be signed by two living beings. Now, there's another thing people are confused about: service agreements versus contracts. Listen, you consent to service agreements. You know, we all do. Cable company, water bill, electric company, gas company. These are consensual things, and you sign it's called a service agreement you're signing, actually, but it's not a contract. There's nobody on the other side of that contract. Okay. Now, just because it's not a contract doesn't mean you're not obligated to pay the money that you promised. Listen, if you took their services, you used their stuff, you know, and because you consented to use their stuff, you did that by will because you signed that agreement. You don't try and get out of it. You pay your bills. You know, you pay what you're. You know, that's due to somebody. I don't even care if it's not due to another man or woman. If it's due to the company, if somebody's got a company and I made a service agreement with that company that, hey, you guys provide me this service and I'll pay you this money each month, I owe that money. You know, but if I didn't agree to that and they're just sending me bills, well, then we have nothing. We don't have either a contract or a service agreement because I never willingly put my wet signature on that agreement to have a service agreement. Now, here's some unconsented government services that you're being pushed for: property taxes, sewer taxes, trash taxes, etc. So nowhere. First of all, the main thing is people are hung up on being a taxpayer. How exactly did you become a taxpayer? First of all, who determined that you were a taxpayer? What was the determination to make that you were a taxpayer? I mean, what elements were there that you're a taxpayer? And hold on a second. Let me get here. Sorry, interruption by the dogs. It happens. So yeah, who decided you were a taxpayer? What are the elements that they decided that made you a taxpayer? And where did they get the authority to make you a taxpayer? Can I just go like someone says, some wise man said to me, if I can't do it to you, you can't do it to me. Can I run around the street and deem people, you're a taxpayer, you're this, you're a citizen, you're a resident, No, I don't have that authority to run around and hang titles on people's heads. And guess what? Neither do your local governments and your county governments and your state governments have authority to lay titles onto you. And that's what they're doing when they're calling you taxpayer, citizen, resident, blah, 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 whatever else they want to call you. They're hanging titles on your head, okay? Now, we talked about service agreements. We talked about contracts. So let's clear this up too. Like I said, you can't have a contract with a cable company, not unless another man or woman signed the other side. So there's no such thing as a unilateral contract, also known as an adhesion contract, term I've heard thrown around a lot. How can I have a unilateral contract? I mean, uni means one, okay? So now I sign something and there's nobody on the other side. Well, if there's nobody on the other side, then there's no obligation to anybody, because nobody signed the other side and there was never any obligation that was determined. You know, him and I, or her and I, never had a meeting of the minds. So it's not a contract. It's something I signed. Doesn't make it a contract because you know the 5 elements of a contract. So he said, now listen, you can't have a one-sided contract, as you would have no obligation to another man or woman to perform. And you can't have an obligation to a corporation unless you signed a service agreement with that corporation. Then you have an obligation to that corporation. You willingly entered into that. And I don't want to encourage people to try and get out of their bills. Pay your bills. If you owe them money, pay your bills. That's not why I do this stuff, to try and get out of paying stuff. You know, I'll pay my fair share, my due of what I owe, what I actually owe. So if I determine that I need water or I need gas, I'll pay my fair share of what that costs. What that gas company tells me, this is what gas costs, this is what water costs, this is what cable costs. Great. And any time I decide that I don't like their prices, I could cancel the agreement, you know, and settle up the bill, whatever I owe them. But I'm not forced to take their service. So if you signed anything that meets the definition of a unilateral contract, you simply rescind your signature, as there's no party that signed on the original written instrument to oppose you. Like if I signed even if it's a driver's license, there's nobody signed the other side of my driver's license, so that can't be a contract. And you go look at the elements of a contract and go walk the driver's license through the offer, acceptance, consideration, meeting of the minds, and signed by two sentient beings. And you're going to find it's missing all kinds of elements, so it's not a contract. And geez, I would you could, I guess, call it a service agreement. But like I said, if it's a service agreement, you could stop the service anytime you want. No one can make you contract. Let's get that clear too. People don't understand that. No one can force you into a contract. Can't be done. I can't go over to my neighbor John's house and force John into a contract with somebody or something. I can't do that to John, and he can't do it to me. Well, if I can't do it to John, he can't do it to me. Then these corporations, these governments, these corporations masquerading as governments, they can't force you into a contract either. Right? That's the law. That's real law. This isn't make-believe fairyland where attorneys and lawyers operate. They operate in Never Never Land, the attorneys. Everything where attorneys speak for fictional entities. I'm going to speak and act for the fictional entity. That's La La Land, okay? La La Land or legal land. So when you hear legal land, think La La Land. Because that's where they are. They're in La La Land. Because nothing they're doing is lawful, and nothing they're doing that they can't support anything they're doing. When you actually know the facts of what's going on, and you can press them with those facts, they fold like the cheap tent that they are, basically. They're not going to be able to stand up to you. Listen, all corporations, remember all these body politics we just talked about? All these governing bodies are body politics. They all have corporate charters. They either have their own corporate charter or they're pledged to follow somebody else's corporate charter. Like I'm pretty sure here that the county has a corporate charter, and I know even though the local boroughs and the townships probably have their little charters, they still piggyback off the county's charter. So I'm going to tell you to basically, if you want to do some interesting reading, go download your county's charter or your city or your township's charter and read it. Because what you're going to find in there's something called like a powers clause in the charter, and it's going to state where the county and gets their power, and it'll state in there that they have to follow the federal and state constitution. They have to adhere to the federal and state constitution. It's not an option. In other words, their charter can never supersede the state constitution, and the state constitution can never supersede the federal constitution. Can never supersede the federal constitution. So go read the powers clause in the charter, and that's great stuff. I've used it against counties here and the borough and township here. I stick it in their face. Hey, look what this says. Here's what you're bound by. Look at that. Oh, you're not following this. You're in non-compliance of the state.
I'll stop right there. Make it a couple of different videos on this. That way you guys can kind of go over it a couple of times. Diesel for We the People News. Till next time. Bye, y'all.